I was asked the other day by a friend if I could help set up a sewing machine for them. They'd got a sewing machine given to them and they absolutely had no idea of how to set it up and use it. I gave them a hand, we set it up, and within a few minutes they were happily sewing away. But it made me realise there's a lot of people that don't know the very, very basics of setting up a sewing machine. I was exactly the same way. I needed a sewing machine to do a few little projects that I had to do, but I really didn't know much about them. I fumbled around with some second-hand machines I had, could never get them to work right. Threads were always breaking, stitches never seemed quite right. Totally frustrating. Till I finally bought a new machine, a very basic, simple machine. Read the instruction book, which told me a bit. I checked YouTube and saw a lot of great videos on how to set up sewing machines. I was coming from it with a little bit of experience, so it wasn't too hard to set up. But like the other day, somebody who'd been given a machine, no instruction book, really no history of ever using a sewing machine, and all they wanted to do was some very basic sewing. So what I'm going to do with this video, as I promised that person, I'm going to show the basic functions of a simple sewing machine, how it operates, how to set up the bobbin, how to set up the thread, your basic stitches. I'm no expert on this, but it's something that I can pass on to those that are very, very basic beginners. If you know how to set your machine up and you know how to sew, this video will be of absolutely no interest to you. But for those who don't know anything about sewing, I hope this video will help you out. Let's start at the very beginning. This is a basic beginner's sewing machine, sort of thing that you can pick up at your sewing shop. Very simple, very straightforward, no computerized stuff on it. It's just got your basic stitches. Good simple machine. This one happens to be an Elna. The one that I helped set up the other day was a Janome, but virtually exactly the same machine, down to the dials, the reversing lever, everything. Okay, so let's do a quick run through. Firstly, the machine itself. Very simple. Starting on this side, you have got your spindle which turns the needle, or sends the needle up and down. That spins when you start the machine, and you can use it with your hand to manipulate your needle up and down. It's got two functions. One is a sewing function, which is set now, and if you pull it out like that, it helps wind the bobbin on, and the bobbin sits on here. When that's pulled out like that, the needle doesn't operate. It does not go up and down. Okay, so when you're threading your bobbin, which I'll do later, you'll see that the needle won't move up and down, and you can do that. So if you start your machine up and the needle's not going up and down, one of the first things you look at to see whether that is pressed in or not. Going down from there, you've got your on and off switch here. When you put your on switch on, a light lights up on the machine, so you can see what you're doing down there. From the machine is your power lead. One goes off to the power and the other one is to your pedal. That's the pedal. Very simple machine. Push it down, it starts your machine and increases the speed of your needle. Let it up and your needle will back off, and when there's no pressure on it, the machine will just sit there and do nothing. So, important part, you need that, you need your power supply, and you need your pedal. Your foot pedal goes on the ground and is operated naturally by your foot. That's one of the things you've got to learn when you're doing your machine, is how much pressure you need on your pedal to make it run. That fits there. Now, that's all on that side. Moving around to the front, you've got your reversing lever. When that's pressed down, the machine will go into reverse. So if you're stitching forward and you press that down, your machine will stop and go in reverse, and it will feed your material out in a reverse fashion. Next up here, you've got your stitch pattern. Really, really handy. Need to look at it if you want to know what sort of stitch you're going to do, and if you want to do a certain stitch, it'll tell you what to do. Very simple things on it: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A and B relate to this knob here. Well, actually all of these relate to this knob here. This position will tell you what your needle will be doing. A position is in the center, which means that your needle will be in the center while it is sewing. Okay, it'll be in the centre of your foot, which is there. B, if you put it to B, it will move the needle over to the left, and this little symbol shows you here that it'll move the needle over to the left. C is a zigzag. So if you put it into C, your needle will go left, right, left, right, left, right, and do a zigzag. D, E, F and G is a variation on zigzags. You can see the patterns that it does. Each machine is a little bit different, so each machine will have a slightly different pattern. You may have more of them or you may have less of them. So that's your basic machine operation. Shows you letters and little figurines of what the stitches will look like and everything else. Moving up from there, we have got your stitch length. Okay, stitch length is there. 0 is your shortest length, 4 is your longest length, and it's got a little symbol up in here that shows you short to longer stitches. So that works in conjunction with everything else to make how long your stitches are, from very short stitches to longer stitches. Works with zigzag and for a straight stitch. This is your selector dial, and again this relates to this chart down here. For the simple beginner who just wants to do a normal straight stitch, leave it in your A position. That will give you a simple straightforward stitch. You can then, as you get used to the machine, you can do other things like move it into zigzag. This zigzag here is C, and between C and B gives you your width of your zigzag. So on C it'll be the wider zigzag, slowing closer and closer to B will be your narrower zigzag. C, D, E, F and G relate to your stitch types. Moving up onto the top, here we have your bobbin winder, a little post that moves left and right. In the right position, when the bobbin's on it, it presses against this little wheel, holds the material on there, so when you wind your bobbin it holds the thread on close onto your bobbin. When it finishes winding, it will automatically pop back so that you know your bobbin's finished. On the top here is your thread holders, 2 of them on this particular machine. A lot of the basic machines have 2 of them, and you can run either 1 or 2 sets of threads. Most people will run 1 thread, so just keep that one out of the way, run 1 thread. Next one over here, next bit really, is your handle for carrying the machine around. This one here is your thread tensioner. You can have your thread in there, just keeps a little bit of tension. It's not a tensioner, it's just a holder really. Mainly used for when you're threading your bobbin, and I'll demonstrate that later. Then you have your thread holder, and this piece down here, up here, this is where you put your thread through, and it's got to be wound in a certain way so that your thread works, and I'll do that a little bit later. In the centre here is your thread tensioner. So this is how much tension that is on the thread, and it goes from 0 to 9. Now generally most books say keep your thread on 3 to 4. I find that works fine for just about everything I do. If you're having trouble with your threads breaking or bunching up, then you might need to adjust it slightly, but that's a little bit more involved and I'm not going to go into it. So your thread tension there, keep it on 3, 4, whichever works for you. So I usually keep mine on 3. Moving down here, under here you've got your needle, you've got your foot, thread holder, a lot of little bits and pieces. It looks complicated, but it is really quite simple. There's a little screw in here that holds your needles in. The needles will only go in one way. They've got a flat piece, they slide up, and you screw that little screw in, and that holds your needle. On here is your plate. On the plate, it's got a little jagged piece which actually grips your thread, grips your material, and helps move your material either forward or backwards. And also on the plate you've got lines, different widths, lines and widths. That's just to help as a guide so that you can use that for holding your material out to certain. Not all machines do this, but most machines, the very basic machines do. You have got a plate that comes off. It just gives you a little bit of extra room to hold your material on. Quite often you will have a little bag of goodies, and they're quite often kept in there. That's how they come with the machine. So if you can't find a lot of your stuff, look in there and you'll find a lot of little things. Usually thread pickers, maybe different feet, spare bobbins, a whole heap of different things. Behind that plate, a little flap door. Again, most machines are like this. And in here you've got your bobbin. Again, it looks quite complicated, but don't worry about most of it. I will show you the basics of threading a bobbin, putting it in, and how to feed it out. So that's your basic machine. As you see, it's set up, ready to go. Very simple, nothing intimidating about it, and quite simple to use. One thing I forgot to mention on the back of your machine is a little lever that puts your foot up and down, which is a piece that you'll use very, very often. Some machines have a thread cutter. Mine's got a thread cutter on the other side, just so you can put your thread through and just nip it off. So that's the basic machine. I'll just reset up the camera and we'll go through a few more of the pieces to set it up.